This is my bike. It's a Jawa, Czechoslovakian originally. Anyway, it's a 350, twin carburetors, very comfortable. Put some LEDs on the front so that people can see me when I'm driving, because the headlight isn't much good either. And my sheepskin is for comfort, because my backside usually goes a little bit numb after a long journey or during a long journey. But what I like most about it is the riding position and the handlebars, the nice straight handlebars, which are very comfortable. I've added a few modifications. That's for the GPS, and that's for charging phones and other things, and that's where I mount my cheapo camera. Oh, and that's for keeping money in for tolls and things like that, so you can easily grab it without taking the gloves off. Yeah, she's a nice looking bike, and I've done thousands of miles on her over the years. Well, yeah, she was made in 2012, so she's not that old, really. Yeah, really tough bike, not very complicated to work on. I try to do all the maintenance myself. This is the little iTech GoPro lookalike camera, which I've been using for filming, and I've fitted it up on this handy little bracket with those plastic clips. Yeah. And the LEDs, the spotlights. Yeah, these spotlights I fitted a couple of years ago because well, the headlight's not very good. But the most important thing for me is the fact that people see me when I'm riding along. And they do give pretty good light as well, you know, when you're out and about, but I don't really drive very much at night. I don't drive out on the open road in the countryside at night, that is. That's mainly because it can be quite dangerous for stray animals. Today I'm trying out a cheap GoPro lookalike camera, which does 1080p, and I must admit it's actually much better than I thought it would be. Anyway, I'm on my bike, riding from Vicente Lopez in Buenos Aires down a very wide road known as Avenida Libertador, which takes you right to the very centre of town. In fact, it's one of my favourite rides on a Saturday or Sunday, that is, when there isn't too much traffic. And here we are, just approaching a big motorway known as General Paz, which is like a ring road around town. But I tend to avoid that and go straight down this lovely avenue, which is normally about 4 or 5 lanes in each direction. I like it because it's spacious. You know, you can have the speed limit isn't too bad. It's about 60 kilometers an hour, and generally speaking, it's very safe. You know, unless something unexpected happens. And the bike I'm on, as I said, is a Jawa 350, twin cylinder, twin carbs. It's as tough as old boots. It really is. There's hardly anything complicated electrically on it, which means I can do all the maintenance, oil changing, chain and sprockets and all that kind of thing. So anyway, back to the video. Here we are going down Libertador, heading nicely into town. The traffic begins to open up a bit, and on the left I think we're going past, or we may just have passed the memorial for the disappeared during the military dictatorship of the 70s and 80s, which I still haven't been to, but I plan to. I've been to the Falklands Museum, which was very interesting, otherwise known as the Malvinas Museum, of course. And so shortly we should be getting up to the huge racecourse known as the Hippodromo. I can never say that word correctly. But yes, it's and the roads are in very good condition, generally speaking. And if you're very lucky, you get what they call una ola verde, which is like a green wave, but all the lights are perfectly synchronized and green in your favor, which I rather like, I must admit. Even better is when you get timers on the traffic lights, so it counts down from 60 or 45 or whatever the number of minutes it might be on the traffic lights, and I find those very handy because you can. It's even handier when you approach the traffic lights because you can time your approach. I once made the fatal mistake of, in fact, on a road coming up fairly soon, of approaching the traffic lights and slamming my brakes on when the lights had turned to amber, and consequently went head over heels with the bike on top of me, and that's one mistake I won't be making again. It seems rather pointless to slam your brakes on using a bike at traffic lights. The speedo on my bike actually overreads by about 12 kilometers an hour, so so if it's showing about 70 or 70 kilometers an hour or 68 or something, I know I'm okay, but well, if I've got the GPS attached, I can always rely on that, more or less. As far as driving here is concerned, it's a pretty fluid experience, to be honest. Yeah, when I say fluid, what I really mean is that you know, when in Rome, you know, be a Roman. I mean, you have to go with the flow. The traffic keeps moving, and you know, the essence of driving in Buenos Aires is to keep moving. I suppose like any other big city, really, but. So you have to learn the tricks, you know, the tricks of the trade, as it were, and at first I used to be rather intimidated by it, but not so much now, and I didn't do any filtering to start with, because I've only been riding for about 10 years, and so I'm not really an old hand at this. But once you start filtering, which is perfectly legal, I might add, I really rather enjoy it. I don't do filtering at high speed on motorways. You know, at sort of 70 or 80 miles an hour, it's just not my cup of tea. But in, you know, in relatively slow traffic, I think you're okay. And well, obviously, traffic lights and traffic jams, you know, what's the point of having a bike if you're not slipping past the rest of the traffic? So yeah, up on the left you can probably see that raised platform, like viaduct thing. Well, that's for the rail service from the centre at Retiro, which goes all the way to Tigre. Well, instead of the trains going over barriers, which were death traps, to be honest, they've recently completed this massive flyover so that the trains can go straight into the main station without having to go over these awful barriers where there have been so many accidents with cars and buses being crushed by trains and various other things. So it was all a bit haphazard before, but that's a major improvement. This bit now that we're at is possibly one of my favourite parts. You can see about, what, 1, 2, 3, yeah, it's about 4 lanes in each direction. And having that empty road in front of you on a bike is very nice indeed. It's just not the same in a car, not for me anyway. And mentioning cars, I hardly ever drive the family car anymore. I just don't get anything out of it, no pleasure whatsoever, like you do on a bike. And that yellow sign up there, that displays your car registration or vehicle registration number. I really don't understand it. I don't know what they're for. Probably to show people that if you have been speeding, we've got your number, but it doesn't actually mean that you've been speeding. They just want to remind you that they know who you are. Yeah, that's the Hippodrome racecourse up on the left. It's absolutely massive, and you can see it from the train. And shortly we're going to be coming to the main approach to the center of Buenos Aires. Yeah, this is where everything really widens up a bit. It goes from about 4 lanes to about 8 or 9, and on weekends all the traffic goes in the same direction. So the ones that you can see on the left, they change in rush hour for traffic coming out of town. That they change, to the opposite direction. But as you can see here, it's so wide and open. I mean, you really can let rip down here, and it's great fun. But there are a lot of speed cameras, so you have to be pretty careful. But I find it a liberating experience, and on a Sunday, it's even nicer. Today's Saturday, actually. And in the spring, those trees, which I think are called jacaranda trees, you'll see that the sort of purplish violet coloured flowers come out, and it really does look quite stunning, actually. We've been very lucky so far with all these green traffic lights, I must admit. I wasn't able to do a voiceover simultaneously to filming it because the microphone in the GoPro lookalike isn't the best in the world, I'm afraid, so I've had to do this voiceover separately. Now, coming up here on the left, I thought it was a classic car rally. It turns out to be, well, they look like classic cars, but they've been tuned up, and since the camera is actually on the handlebar, I couldn't really take it off, so we don't actually see very much, but you can actually hear them. Unfortunately, the traffic lights weren't synchronized correctly, and trying to catch up with that car that just left was not very easy. So I don't actually know what type of car that would be called, but anyway, massive exhaust, lots of noise, and massive engines, like, you know, a VW Beetle or something like that. Having spent most of my driving career, if you like, in the UK, where the roads are much narrower, much windier, and more cars per square mile as well, this comes as somewhat of a luxury, I must admit. Well, especially being a Saturday, and you can. Well, the next video I make will hopefully be out on the open road. About half an hour outside Buenos Aires, you know, where I can film some really wide open roads that just go on for miles and miles and miles. But anyway, back to this one. It won't be long before we get to Retiro, which is the main railway station in town. And as far as other traffic is concerned, I tend to stay well clear of buses, because they're on a mission and they don't normally give you much room, so I tend to give them a wide berth. Taxi drivers are pretty good. They tend to hug the right-hand lane most of the time, and we have Uber here as well. But the taxi drivers are not very keen on Uber drivers, for obvious reasons. But that's the way things are going to be. As you can see, those are the big tall buildings in the front. It's mainly the financial district. I think Google's got an office there. Over there, at about 11 o'clock. 10 o'clock you've got the English Tower, and in front the Sheraton. And it's about here I realised that I have to be in the right hand lane in order to turn left, which seems a bit odd, but that's the way it is. And I had to move pretty quickly for that one. I speeded up the traffic light, us waiting at the traffic lights, because I mean, nobody likes waiting at traffic lights anyway, so what's the point of watching it all in real time? I turned left here, so we're going to do a loop and come back round to Retiro, which is also a bus station as well, and it's where you get a lot of people selling stuff in the street, you know, donuts and chorizos. So if you're hungry, there's always something for you. And of course, street traders selling you watches and in-car chargers, all that kind of stuff. The Retiro station was recently completely refurbished. To be honest, it did look a bit of a mess before they got hold of it and improved it, and it really does look quite stunning inside now. But I don't actually show that in this video. Now at this point I wasn't actually sure where to go. I didn't think it was a good idea to carry on because that looks like a bus station, so I thought, well, better do a U-turn here. I'm not sure if it's legal, but there we go. And on the right hand side, that's where you can see people selling you things. And it's a very, very busy area. It's not really the kind of place I'd like to hang around at night though. It's got a bit of a reputation. Just see that tower there on the left. That's known as La Torre Inglesa, aka La Torre Monumental. It was actually given to the city of Buenos Aires by the English community here in, I think, about 1910. In 82 it was renamed from La Torre Inglesa to Torre Monumental for obvious reasons, because of the Falklands War, but most people still refer to it as the English Tower, so you know, old habits die hard, as they say. I decided to come up here, which is one of the there's quite a few cobbled streets, not very comfortable on a bike, I have to say, and this is coming up to Plaza San Martin, which is interesting because this is where the British were handed in their surrender in their second, it was either their first or second defeat in 1806 or 1807. The British unsuccessfully invaded Buenos Aires on 2 occasions, and many people still say, I don't know whether they're joking or being serious, to be honest, we wish the English had won, but well, they didn't, so. But I'm here anyway, doing my bit. On the left, that's the Plaza San Martin, which is got a statue of General José de San Martin, who was the liberator of most of South America. It's a beautiful square, actually. I've been there numerous times. And what we're going to do is loop around this place again, back down to Libertador, and on the right coming up is the famous Florida Street, which goes on for, I don't know, it must be about almost a kilometre up to the very famous Plaza de Mayo, which is where the Pink Palace is located. And there's a lot of English words here. There's a lot of words which, you know, obviously you've got parking, and the Argentines speak Castellano, which is Spanish but a different dialect. And it's full of English words, in fact, which makes it easier for me to understand, I suppose. You probably see that chap there with that cart type thing just by the traffic light. He is probably what is known as a cartonero, and he goes around collecting cardboard off the streets and businesses and then sells it on. And thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people make a living out of doing that every single day. Now today was not only to test this GoPro lookalike camera out, which I think it seems to be performing quite well so far, but also I've been after some English beer, which isn't very easy to find. And although they used to sell it in the supermarkets near me, all of a sudden, which is the same old story here, it just disappeared. So I'm off to a place called Caballito, which I suppose in English would mean little horse, where I have a tiny shop where they sell Old Speckled Hen, Abbott's, and loads of other different beers from the UK and other parts of Europe. Well, anyway, I know he's got it in, and I can't say where it is because, well, I just can't, because otherwise everybody will be going there. And he's expecting me, and he's put some aside. So at this point in the ride, I'm on a mission, very important mission. It's expensive. It's working out at about, I would say about £4 a can, you know, a can of beer, but why not, you know, it's only once in a while. Every time I see pedestrian crossings like that, with those white lines, I always think of Abbey Road. Yeah, when did I get the bike? Well, I'm just over 60 years old, and I now wish I'd got myself a motorbike, decades ago. We found ourselves living out in the countryside, and we had 2 cars. We sold one, and then I realised I didn't have any wheels. Never been on a bike before in my life. Went out, found one, got the bloke to deliver it to me. Luckily we lived on a private housing estate, so I could practice. I mean, I didn't even know where the clutch was, or the gears, nothing. But you've got to start somewhere. So I spent a few days riding around there for some practice, and eventually plucked up the courage to finally go out on the open road. And I haven't looked back since, to be honest. It's a revelation. It's the freedom, really. You know, being able to shoot to the beginning of the queue at traffic lights, filtering through traffic. I just love it. I really do. Especially in weather like this. And I think if you're careful, if you don't go over the top and you don't take too many risks, you should be okay. Luckily I know this road because I've been to this little beer shop about 7 or 8 times already, so I know my way. And you know, you just get a feel for the road. See that bus on the right hand side? That's why you don't want to stay in the right hand lane, because, you know, they just go ploughing on through those buses. Well, that's their job, I suppose. This bit takes quite a while, and again, luckily we ended up with almost a green wave full of green traffic lights, which I love. Yeah, the traffic here is bunching up a bit, so I've had to revert to a bit of filtering just to get past everything, really. Otherwise it would take all day. One often wonders, you know, whether you should keep reading the highway code or the rules of the road, but in the end I decided that you know, it's best to go with the flow. Questionable whether you should really go inside traffic down the left-hand side of the pavement, but really, does it matter as long as, you know, you don't bump into somebody who's opening a car door at the same time? Or you could go on the right, but since it's a one-way street, I don't suppose it really makes much difference. I was talking about this to some people the other day, and I was talking to them about filtering, and well, they said, well, they couldn't stand motorcyclists because they keep knocking their wing mirrors off. Well, luckily I haven't done that yet, but you know, the object of the exercise is to get from A to B quickly and in one piece, hopefully. I mean, nobody likes getting stuck in traffic. This particular part was an interesting challenge, I must admit. But yeah, I like driving around Buenos Aires. It's great fun, and I don't think I'd be able to do it without the GPS at all. It's you know, because it's such a massive place. You know, the main city itself has got a population of 3 million, and I think the province itself, into which you could fit Spain and possibly one or two other small countries as well. Well, it looks as if we're very close now to the final destination, the beer cellar, and I'm hoping you still got what I'm after. Well, I've got the beer tucked away in my backpack, and now we're on our way back home. I speeded this bit up because it's all pretty much the same as all the other places I've driven through, but this is in the southwestern part of the city of Buenos Aires, which is an autonomous city and has its own laws, which can be different to other places within the province of Buenos Aires. And of course all the other provinces or states have their own laws as well, because it's a federal republic. This is a nice long straight road. I think it's called Juan B. Justo, which goes all the way up to well, almost to the city, and at the end we'll be turning right to get on to Libertador, which is the road we came down previously. And again, of course, being a Saturday, it's fairly quiet. Not very lucky with the traffic lights on this particular occasion. So let's see. I was thinking of trying to keep up with that bike in front until I discovered it was a BMW 1200. I'm not sure of the exact model number, but I think he's a bit nippier than me. Again, I've speeded this up because it's mainly filtering through quite heavy traffic. Talking of filtering, apparently filtering is illegal in every state in the US apart from California and Utah. And it's also illegal in Canada, although I can't be entirely sure about that, but I think you can do it in the UK. Certainly legal here, but having said that, even if it was illegal, I'm sure most people would do it anyway. I'm not saying that Argentines are serial lawbreakers, but there does seem to be a certain point of view that laws here are made to be broken, and within reason, of course. This particular road is always very busy, regardless of what day it is, so you just have to grin and bear it, really. And it's only 2 lanes each way, you know, which is why I've sped it up a little bit. But it's quite good fun darting between the cars, I must admit. A big improvement has been what's known as the Metro Bus, which is a special bus lane that goes through the centre of, well, between the 2 main lanes, and it really has made a massive difference. Probably one of the next videos I make will be of the main incredibly wide avenue known as 9 de Julio, which is where the obelisk is, and that has changed beyond recognition with the building of this Metrobus lane in the middle. You know, because buses are really difficult to deal with because they're darting in and out and stuff, but now that they're slap bang in the middle in their own special space, you know, you don't have to fight with them anymore. just noticed those twin towers up front, which look rather spooky. Obviously they're not. I think they're either office buildings or residential flats, or apartments as the Americans call them. Yeah. Well, shortly we'll be coming up to Libertador, which is the road we came down originally, so we've more or less gone full circle. Coming up here on the left is the biggest mosque in Buenos Aires, apparently. It's a beautiful building, and it's the only one I've ever seen in the city. I've been all over the city and been to numerous provinces and never seen another mosque. I think it could have been something to do with ex-President Menem, who himself was a Muslim, and if I'm not wrong, he later converted to Catholicism. Well, this is one of the best bits, being first at the lights, but I'm not sure why I got tangled up with this grey car to our left. I should really have gone behind him, but well, the thing here is that there isn't it's not illegal to undertake, so whichever lane you're in, you can overtake anybody. Normally, of course, you overtake in the fast lane, but actually it's actually sometimes quite hard to tell which is the fast lane. I suppose normally it would be on your left, the left-hand lane, theoretically, but all the lanes seem to do their own speed, you know. about this video camera that I've got on the left hand side of the handlebar. It's a really tiny thing. I think the make is iTech Action Pro or something like that. It's quite clearly a knockoff of the GoPro, and it cost me about, I think it was about 35 quid in Morrison's in Gloucester, something like that. Quid is pounds, by the way. But I couldn't do a voiceover as I was driving because I couldn't sync, well, I haven't got a microphone on board anyway, so I had to shout into it, which wasn't really working. So I've had to do this voiceover separately. But I'm quite pleased with the result. It's got a sort of wavy appearance, the video. I'm not sure what that's all about, but it works. I might upgrade it in the future if I can afford it. But in order to capture things, I had to turn the handlebar to capture things, and there's a girl on the left here doing a juggling act, which I was so busy watching it that I forgot to turn the handlebar, so we didn't actually manage to catch it. That building there is Cotto, a pretty basic chain of supermarkets throughout the country, which I wouldn't recommend. The best supermarkets are known as Jumbo or Disco, and Carrefour isn't too bad. The lower end are Dia and Vea, which I don't go to too often. Currently the country is in a bit of a financial crisis, which seems to happen every couple of years as far as I can tell, and I've been living here for nearly 15 years. There was a devaluation of about 30% after the recent primary elections, and prior to that, about a year ago, another devaluation of about 30 to 40%. So the local currency, which is known as the peso, has devalued over the last 18 months by around about 70%. And inflation is running at about 55% at the last count. So daily living is pretty tough for most people because salaries aren't catching up with inflation, and taking into account devaluation, it's pretty tricky. Of course, it certainly isn't anywhere near the level of Venezuela with 1,000,000% inflation, so fingers crossed we don't get a situation anywhere near as bad as that. So what's it like to live in Buenos Aires, or anywhere in Argentina for that matter? Well, as I said earlier, I've been here since 2005, and it's very interesting. There's always something going on. It's rather an unpredictable country. You get protests most days in the centre of town. With the financial situation, people are pretty used to it now, and I've got used to it. You just have to live with it, you know. The price of your favourite tobacco, for example, going up every week, and stuff in shops going up every week or a couple of weeks. You know, you just stop moaning about it. You just have to live with it, and the people themselves are lovely and very polite, very well mannered. You know, and it's quite an easy country to live in. There are times when it can get a bit stressful, you know, and it's heavily reliant on the US dollar. I often ask people why the country doesn't dollarize, you know, why it doesn't convert the local currency into dollars, quite frankly, because you know, everybody's always watching what the dollar is. And you know, wouldn't life be so much easier if we all did what Ecuador did back in 2001 or 2002 and converted the currency to the dollar then? But as some people say, you know, the size of the cake will remain the same, and you know, how much will it actually change? I suppose one argument is that we buy houses in US dollars, you know, major investments are done in dollars, exports and imports are traded in dollars. You know, it's almost as if Argentines are obsessed with the dollar, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It would be a major political decision for any government to make, to actually convert the local currency to dollars. Oh, and just here I came side by side with a chap riding a similar bike, and we were having a brief chat, but I couldn't actually video him because the camera's on the left-hand side of the bike, so I couldn't really do that. Anyway, this part now is known as Vicente Lopez, which is probably just about a couple of miles from where I live, and within about 5 or 10 minutes, it'll be the end of the trip. The next one I'm hoping to do, as I said before, is out on the open road without this level of traffic. But if you wanted a taste of what driving or riding a motorbike is like in Buenos Aires, this is exactly what it's like. I enjoy it. I enjoy it in this kind of weather. It was only about 16 degrees Celsius today. Nice cool breeze. But when it's really, really hot, like 36, 38 degrees Celsius, it can get a little bit sticky. Yeah, it was that chap there on the right I was having a quick chat with. And, well, you know the biker fraternity, we always say hello to each other and stop if a biker needs help or he's broken down or whatever. And that's just another reason why I love riding a motorbike.